good evening. It's April 23rd, 2026, and welcome to another one of our branches on the vine with the Bible Project. Tonight, we're going to continue exploring some thoughts on, are the Ten Commandments just rules? The Bible Project, they have begun a new series as they engage in the study of the instructions, rules, guidance, the wisdom that God gave us in the Torah. These videos that we're going to be discussing, they're always just the tip of an iceberg. They are parts of a growing learning series that I highly recommend, and all of them can be found on the Bible Project's website and their app. Both are linked in the description. So welcome this evening as we continue this discussion of, are the Ten Commandments just rules? On the Dusty Feet. Our hope with the Dusty Feet is to foster discussion and to help build and support communities. If you are not already connected to a community or just want to share and interact, this community has 4 primary ways to interact. 1. TheDustyFeet.com. That's our primary place to find everything. You are always free to comment. 2. Substack. Link is in the description below. It's designed around the written and spoken text. It's a place to connect to ourselves and others. 3. Facebook, at the Dusty Feet. These videos and other videos are also available for comment and discussion. 4. And as always, you're welcome to send an email to bob@thedustyfeet.com. These places, they will be moderated and guidelines will be set to ensure healthy, safe discussion. And as always on the Dusty Feet, this is a place where we can safely explore the endless ways of God and the interconnection of His creation. Belief understandings may be challenged, divine misunderstandings may exist, and traditional teachings might falter as we pursue connection, context, and community with God and each other here in an environment of grace and love. Oh, and before we forget, if you find these kinds of podcasts useful, soon you click that subscribe button. Those reminders, they just help you. But also, if you think these might be useful to others, that is when you click that like button, because it is how YouTube chooses to share these to more people if they wish. So to help us stay on topic, right, let's review the video first. We're going to do it again. It's only 5 minutes. I think it's very worthwhile, so enjoy.
We are going to talk about the 10 Commandments. These are the most well-known rules in the whole Bible. Maybe the most famous rules in all of human history.
Yeah, they are really famous. But if we take time to look deeper, what we're going to discover is that the 10 Commandments are actually not just rules.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, every command in the Bible is way more than a command.
What do you mean?
So let's think, for example, about the first time in the Bible that God tells anybody to do anything. It's what God says to humanity when He creates them in Genesis 1.
God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the land."
That's right. But notice, it's not actually called a command. It's called a blessing. So this first command sets the tone for all of the commands to come. Every command in the Bible is an invitation to find life.
That's nice, but how? Right? Like, don't we need rules to tell us how to find life?
Sure, but rules only get you so far. I mean, what we really need is a way to discern between right and wrong and good and bad in any of life's complicated situations. And this is what the Bible calls wisdom.
Okay, how do I get wisdom?
Okay, so now we have to check out the second command in the story of the Bible. And what you see is it is all about a search for wisdom.
Okay.
So this is after God puts the human in the garden. In Genesis chapter 2, we read this.
Yahweh God commanded the human, saying, "From every tree of the garden you will surely eat."
Which, real quick, includes the tree of life.
Nice.
So enjoy the tree of God's own life that will never end.
Great. Eat up. I like this command.
But it continues.
But from the tree of knowing good and bad, you will not eat from it. For in the day that you eat from it, you will surely die. Okay, so there's a tree. It teaches good from bad, but don't eat it? What's going on?
Yeah, this story is super dense, and it's a riddle. It's inviting us to meditate on what is the command really all about. Now, let's turn the command over. There's actually two parts to this command. We have this negative command, not eating from the tree of knowledge, but notice that is matched or balanced by this positive invitation to eat from the tree of life. I mean, the whole premise is that all the trees look beautiful and good.
Yeah.
So how do I know the difference between the tree that will kill me and the tree that brings life? It is only because God's telling me.
Okay. So real wisdom comes from listening to God's voice, and that leads to life, instead of taking wisdom on my own terms, which leads to death.
Exactly. That's what the story is saying.
Okay.
And it's this story that is setting the stage for every command to come in the Bible. And there are a lot of commands coming in the Bible, like hundreds, rules and statutes and laws, but every one of them is actually just like this first command, which is an invitation to hear God's voice and find life. To do that, we have to meditate on the commands, turning them over and pondering how each one invites us to discover life and the wisdom of God within the command. This is actually what the author of one of the Psalms is trying to tell us.
How good is life for the one who delights in the Torah of the Lord, and on his Torah they meditate day and night.
Torah here means instruction and is often translated as law.
They will be like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season.
Yeah, this is so cool. So living by God's wisdom doesn't just mean that I get to eat from the tree of life. It's that I actually become a tree of life to others. It's inviting us to live in a radical and bold way that brings us life, but also shares that life with others.
Yeah. So this is the invitation with the 10 commands.
Yeah.
We get to meditate on them and find life.
Yes, yeah. And we can think of them as just a list of 10 rules, like a moral checklist. But if we take time to meditate on them, turn them over, we will discover there's a whole universe of wisdom and life in every single one of these most famous rules in the Bible.
I hope that review was helpful. I enjoyed that video. So, building on our part 1, we've already had this. I loved another one of Tim's points. And I don't think it's a subtle point. It just might not jump out at first, but I think it's an important point and something we kind of hang on to when we go through this, right? We need to anyways. And so part of that instruction that God gave in Genesis, it's going to be the only way that we're going to know which tree is what, right? Which is not the good tree for us out of all the trees that God gives us, because we can't tell. God lets us know. In the image of his way, right? He gives us the choice, though. Yeah. He tells us what is good and not so good, i.e. bad, right? But he tells us. And in this little picture is just fruit. And yet in that is such a broader thought of life. But the thought of God, the only way we can tell what is good fruit and what is bad fruit, well, that's what God tells us. Because that's going to define how I'm going to look at this. Am I comfortable? Am I willing to? Can I make a different choice? Meaning to listen to God's wisdom on what fruit to eat, what he says is good and not so good. And there's one of the strong points that Tim makes, that this is just the beginning, right? That there are many, many instructions. Tim said hundreds, and I agree. I think the number that we banter around today, again worthy of discussion, is 613. It's a great start point. But I think his point is not in the number, right? His point is that all of these, every single one, is an invitation to life. So looking at these as an invitation to life, right, it's a fundamental shift from what many of us were taught growing up in our various churchianity ways. Maybe we were told these were no longer relevant, maybe no longer useful. And some people even told you you were sinning by actually following them. Yes, I have heard that. I've been personally told that. But Tim is just reminding us that with these instructions of God, the ones he's giving to people, right, is that it's in their time and in that space. But the wisdom that he's giving is life-giving, life-shaping. That would be in perpetuity. And of course, I like to point out that Tim brings up about us needing to meditate on these things, right? We need to think about them. So yeah, let me go back to the life analogy that I referenced in part 1 about soccer, right? We know the laws of the game in soccer. And then we have additional books to advise referees on this beautiful game, right? This is wisdom gleaned over the years. Referees throughout the development of these texts have contributed information on various scenarios, and that's because in these, and they actually talk about, okay, this says this, and then here's what it might look like, right? And sometimes they have a graphic. Often they'll give a verbal word picture of what it is. And then the way they would like us as referees to take the wisdom of experience of somebody else and apply it in our game, right? Advice to referees. I love them. But then inside of that, as Tim said, not only do I need to know that, I need to have those to gain that wisdom, but then sometimes I do need to meditate on it. So in that soccer example, right, there are times when I would sit down in my head and think about what can happen in games, right? And to be fair, it's easy to have something happen in your game that you never thought would happen in your game. Yeah, that's something you need to be kind of aware that sometimes things happen you're not sure how to handle. I didn't meditate on that. That's life. But you think about what's going to happen in these games, of what's possible in these games, because especially the difference between doing a U12 boys match and a Charleston Battery match. And you meditate on that and you think, how am I going to respond? What happens when a player comes back at me, right? I'm 5'7", 5'8" on a good day. And in my prime, while refereeing, I was not necessarily imposing, right? This has advantages. It also has disadvantages. So how do I deal with a 6-foot+ player that's coming at me in some heated moment? How am I going to handle that? And then how can I, in what God has given me, right, designed me to be, and use that in a positive way to be involved in the game differently than someone else? And sometimes it's just another referee. There's a buddy of mine, Wayne Pavlicek. I love Wayne, but he's a big Marine. I mean, a big Marine. So there's things that I can do that Wayne cannot, but there are ways that Wayne can communicate that I definitely cannot. But both of us still have the need to have the wisdom to know that this approach to the game meets all the other criteria, right? I don't get to make up my own rules because I'm a little guy. Wayne, he doesn't get to make up his own rules because he's a big guy. The rules are for the game, right? The rules are for life. The rules are for the players, right? Those that live on this planet. The rules are for the game. The rules are for our lives. So maybe this little segue back to the common life side is that these instructions are meant not only for leaders, those that are part of, say, some authoritative life, the authoritative figures. I think these instructions, these laws, this wisdom is designed for all of us as life beings, right? These human beings that are living this out. What are we now? Over 8 billion on our planet? They actually postulate that there's been 117 billion people that have been born over the course of time. That could get interesting when said time at the end gets, because that's a lot of people. That could take some time. But these people, some are leaders, some are in charge. So we need to make it kind of clear, though, that even when they're in charge, they're leaders. I need to make this clear. Not all leaders are in charge, and not all people that are in charge are leaders, right? So I'm going to leave that for you to ponder amongst yourselves for a whole nother discussion. But within that framework, how do we live our everyday lives together? Like in soccer, it's on the pitch. For us, it's the rest of the planet. How am I going to live my life as the example that the God that I believe in, this God who created all in Genesis, right? How am I going to follow what He wants when He says, that fruit, that's not good for you, but this fruit, oh, this fruit's very good for you. He mentions Psalm chapter 1. The Psalms all begin right here on this first one. And I want to read the full Psalm. It's only 6 verses, right? So Psalm 1 starts in verse 1. Blessed is the man who shall not walk in the counsel of the wrong, and shall not stand in the path of sinners, and shall not sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the Torah of Yahweh, and he meditates in his Torah day and night. For he shall be as a tree planted by the rivers of water, that yield its fruit in its season, whose leaf does not wither, and whatever he does, well, it prospers. The wrong are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind blows away. And therefore the wrong shall not rise in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For Yahweh knows the ways of the righteous, but the way of the wrong, it comes to naught. So meditate on his ways. The Torah is what God gave. It's the Torah that his son actually references to meditate on these things, to look at them and say, okay, I know this, but how is this going to affect my life today? When they had the parables, and he's giving them a life example, he's saying, okay, based on what you understand with what God has wanted you to do, how are you going to respond to this parable? Gives us something to think about. But now we have to continue to get a little context, right? And saying that because there's going to be points when we read Torah, when we get down the road, right? We're going to look at these and say, how does this apply to me today? I know it's one of my dad's favorite things is how does this apply to me today? So sometimes we may come across something where it doesn't seem to apply to me because it's very specific about them. I think I can agree to some parts there, but I think there's also going to be some good discussions to have amongst yourselves about how this all looks. Because inside the wisdom, it's going to help us understand these differences between my life example, the U12 girls game and the professional game. Those big boys in life. Just as there are instructions in our lives that apply to very young children, but not to adults, maybe there was a time when your mom let you out of the house, right? Actually, she didn't let you out of the house, yet you'd still got to play. Then you got to get out of the house. You got to play in the yard. You just didn't get to go outside the yard. You still got to play. And eventually, it was in the neighborhood. You still got to play. So the boundaries and some of the things, well, they can expand. Still, we remember safety and security are primary. So you make those decisions as parents and as people, right, as those boundaries get broader. Some of them are sometimes unavoidable, meaning walls. You have fences. And then you have nothing. Those are gone. The walls are gone. The fences are gone. You have open space. So now, what do you do? What do you do as you expand, as you grow out? These are also good discussions. Again, please have these amongst yourselves. Because these 10 commandments, one could say, are foundational, right? They support everything that goes with them, that's attached to them. And I will add, it's the backward reference from the Messiah that those 10, they hang on, we'll call the big two, right? I think it's another good discussion for another day. We want to build a mobile, as it were, a visual one, where it starts with the big two, hang the 10, and then how would we hang those other, 603? How do they function? Because they all need to work together. They're all from God, and they're all meant for life. One of the things that I like about soccer is that it has very few exceptions. It's not without exceptions, but it has very few. Meaning that when the rules say something, it applies in almost every situation. I'll give a quick, basic thing that gives you an idea. The line on the pitch, it defines the area. It's part of the area. It's 4 inches wide. It's part. When you're on a soccer pitch, when you're on the line, that's still good. That's on the field of play. That's part of the pitch. So for the ball to be out of play, right, it has to go out of bounds or into touch. And 100% of the ball has to be over the line. Not just the bottom of the ball touching the ground. The sphere is in relation to the plane. It goes all the way up. It's a vertical one. 100% of the ball has to be over the line. So that's a foundational point. And it will help me in other ways than in our game, right? It helps me in this. Just like these help me down the road in life situations. These 10 commandments, these are those foundational points. And then I go down the road and I go, okay, how are these other instructions that may come into play in a situation I have in life, how are they relating to those foundational 10? And then how is that relating to my life situation today? Am I taking God's wisdom into account? Because the other 603, maybe you could equate them to, okay, for me, it works in my mental part. It's because I have, again, this related life experience, this game of soccer, right? And in that, we have additional texts, right? We call them advice to referees. And I'd put it in the words that this is the wisdom of life in these situations, right? Experiences of the past. What does that look like? Because we're going to talk about some of those, because some of these instructions can look very different for us today. We're going to look at these down the road when we get there. What wisdom can that bring if it doesn't look like mine? How can I learn from the experience that was? That makes sense? In other words, we just kind of need to think about these instructions in context and then in life today. And then when we're looking at them, what wisdom they held so that I can see the wisdom in them now. So I want to leave today by actually covering a section of Scripture that actually talks about these. Because like Tim is saying, the result of when you consider these and when you don't. Because I think it's wonderful. It's from Deuteronomy chapter 30. We're going to start in verse 10, right? So, if you obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim to guard his commands and his laws, which were written in the book of Torah, if you turn back to Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, for this command which I'm commanding you today, it's not too hard for you, nor is it far off. I mean, it's not in the heavens to say, who shall ascend into the heavens for us and bring it to us and cause us to hear it so that we can do it. Nor is it beyond the sea to say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it to us and cause us to hear it so that we should do it. For the word is very near to you. It's in your mouth. It's in your heart to do it. See, I've set before you today life and good, death and evil. And in that, I'm commanding you today to love Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways, to guard his commandments and his laws and his right rulings. And you shall live and increase, and Yahweh your Elohim shall bless you in the land which you go to possess. But if your heart turns away, and you do not obey, and you shall be drawn away, and shall bow down to other mighty ones and serve them. So I've declared to you today that you shall certainly perish. You shall not prolong your days in the land which are passing over the Jordan to enter and possess. I have called the heavens and the earth as witness today against you. I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, you shall choose life, so that you will live, both you and your seed, to love Yahweh your Elohim, to obey his voice, to cling to him. For he is your life, the length of your days, to dwell in the land which Yahweh swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them. Do any of those words have a familiar echo? Do any of those words just give us a moment to pause, to reminisce, say even back to Genesis? A garden. Everything set before them. And with that, instructions with a choice. 2 trees. Life and the knowledge of good and evil. Blessing, curse. A land before you. Prosper in it. What will you choose? We're going to hear these echoes of this, right? So many times in Scripture. And I'm looking forward to Tim and John and the rest of the folks of the Bible Project as they engage in this journey through these 10 commandments. I think this is going to be quite a ride, and I'm really looking forward to going on it with you. So thanks for being with us tonight as we've wrapped up the second part of Are the Ten Commandments Just Rules? On the Dusty Feet.